Welcome back, guys. Jimmy Jules here again, back with another Cray prop tutorial. In today's episode, we'll be covering the character changer prop. This prop allows you to force the player to change into a specific character. If we open up the settings menu here, you can see we start off with a blank slate where we can add characters. We've also got an index input here, where we can input a signal to force the player's character to change live in-game. I'll show you some examples of this soon. If we go ahead and click the Add button, you can see we'll have a character added at index 0. This index will be the default because our index input currently isn't receiving a signal. If we click on the character icon, it will allow us to choose which character to change our player into. We'll change this to the Average Joe character. Now that we've done this, if we jump into play mode, you can see that rather than being our default avatar, our character is now the Average Joe character. You can do a little more with the character chooser than just set the default character though. We can go ahead and add further indexes, and then add additional characters that our players can become. If we again jump into play mode, now that we've got that second index added, you can see that our character is still the Average Joe character. So how could we make this so that we can switch between the two indexed characters in our character changer? For this, we'll use the index input. Because currently there's no signal being sent to the input, this represents a signal of 0. But we can send different signals to this input port and force the player's character to change live in-game. I'll take you through how you might set this up. We can send a signal to this port using any of the 2.0 props. We could use a calculator. We've also recently got our hands on the new Counter 2.0 prop, so we could for example use the current count output to set the index. But what we're going to use today is just a variable. So we've got our variable here, and we're just going to rename this to character. You can name this whatever you like, of course. It doesn't even need to be a variable. And we're just going to plug the current output directly into the index port of the character changer. This means that whatever value our character variable holds, this will be sent to the input to set the index. We of course need a quick way to update our variable. To update this, we'll be using a variable modifier, and we want to set this to modify our character variable, and for this example we'll use the set option, and we're going to want to set our variable to 1. This will change the index of the character changer to 1. So how will we activate this variable modifier? We've also just recently had released the Sensor 2.0 prop. We'll be using this sensor to activate our variable modifier. If we open up the menus on each, we'll plug our detected from the sensor into our variable modifier's power, so when the sensor detects the player, it will set our character index to 1. So we can tell where we need to go. I've just put an apple tree directly on top of the sensor, so that when we head over to the tree, it will change the index on the character changer and change the character. I've got another example set up here with a couple of trees and a box filled with some props. We've got the exact same props with the sensor and the variable modifier, and for this I've made it so that every time you run between the trees it will change your character. The names coming up at the bottom of the screen are from another setup I have, which I'll take you through a bit of now. So this is the setup here, and basically what we have is a character chooser for the player. I've set it up so that the player can move left and right to choose their character, and then press enter once they're happy with the character that they've chosen. The camera will disable, and then the player is free to move around as that character. We'll go through this part down the bottom first. First of all, this variable here, which I have up on the screen, is plugged into every single one of these calculators, and all that these are doing is checking whether our character number variable is a 1 or a 0 or a 3. It's just checking what number our variable currently is. So basically what they're saying for this example is if our character number variable is equal to 0, then display the text ghost. Because if we look in our character changer, index 0 is the ghost character. And that's all that the rest of these calculators are doing as well. It's just saying if the variable's equal to 1, then display survivor, because that's the index 1 in the character changer. You can see this in action down the bottom of the screen. So currently our variable is 0. We can set our variable to be 1, and it will change our text to be survivor. This is the variable that is also controlling the index of our character changer, so we're using this variable to control all the text and the characters. And in this example, we're using the input triggers to detect when the player has pressed left and right, and we're using these signals to both add and subtract from the character number variable. So basically, as we press right, it's going to increase our index, and when we press left, it's going to decrease our index. I've also got one final input trigger that detects when the player has pressed the return key, or enter, which will set our character chosen variable to 1. Once our character has been chosen and our character chosen variable is set to 1, I'm using a calculator to turn off the entire setup, so that once this value increases to 1, the calculator's conditions will no longer be met, and it will turn off the power to all of the rest of the setup. This includes the input triggers so that the player is no longer able to change their character while they're moving around. It adds a bit of a nice touch for the player to be able to choose their character before they start playing your game. We can also use the same character number that we're sending to our character changer prop to change some other settings in our game as well. You can see here that I've got a variable called run speed plugged directly into the run speed input of our player manager. This means that we can change the run speed of our character to suit whatever the player's chosen. So for example, if your player chose the ball character, you might choose to increase their acceleration and stop time to make it feel more like a ball. So with this setup, that's exactly what we've got going. We're changing the player manager settings to suit the character that's chosen. So you can see the ghost, I've set to have a very long jump so it looks like it's flying. But then if we change into the survivor, you can see he has a normal jump and a normal run speed, and then if we were to change into the ball character, you can see that we can move now a bit faster, and our deceleration has increased, as well as the acceleration, so it takes us longer to speed up and slow down, a bit like a ball. And then the barrel, I've made move and jump very slowly. This has just been a few setups for the character changer prop, just to show you how you can use it both by itself and with the other props. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions at all, definitely leave a comment. This has been Jimmy Jules, and I'll see you in the next one.